Not in the supernatural sense, anyway. I knew the stories, people seeing doubles, mistaken identity, folklore warnings, but I'd always assumed there was a reasonable explanation. People look alike. Memory is unreliable. Our brains fill in gaps. I believed that right up until the point when multiple people told me they'd already spoken to me. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just telling you what happened. It started small, which is probably why I didn't push back harder. A co-worker stopped me in the hallway one morning and said, casually, "Hey, thanks again for covering for me yesterday." I laughed and told him he had the wrong person. He frowned. "No, it was you. Same jacket, same backpack. You said you'd handle the report." I assumed he was mixing me up with someone else. We worked in a large building. People came and went, faces blurred together. It wasn't worth correcting. Later that day, another co-worker asked if I was feeling better. "Better from what?" I asked. She hesitated. "You said you weren't sleeping well, that you felt off." I told her I hadn't said that. She didn't argue. She just nodded slowly, like she was deciding not to say something else. That night, I went home with a faint, unsettled feeling. Not fear, just the sense that something hadn't lined up properly, like a sentence that almost makes sense but doesn't quite resolve. Over the next week, it happened again and again. People mentioned conversations I didn't remember having, comments I didn't recall making, a joke I supposedly told that landed badly, a warning I'd apparently given someone that they couldn't repeat without sounding ridiculous. The details were always specific, not "someone who looked like you," not "I thought it was you." They were certain. Same voice, same mannerisms, same way of standing, same habit of tapping fingers against a desk while listening. One person even mentioned a scar on my hand. I have a scar on my hand. That's when I stopped laughing it off. I started checking obvious explanations. Carbon monoxide exposure, stress, sleepwalking, some kind of dissociation. I read medical forums late at night, scrolling through the stories of people losing time, saying things they didn't remember. None of it fit cleanly, because I wasn't missing time. My days were intact. My calendar matched my memory. My messages showed nothing unusual. No strange sent emails, no unexplained calls, no gaps. And yet, people kept insisting I'd been present. The first moment of real fear came when someone described where they'd spoken to me. The location was wrong. A colleague said she'd talked to me near the stairwell on the east side of the building. I avoid that stairwell. It's not dramatic. It's just poorly lit and echoes strangely. Sound travels oddly there. I use the main stairs every time without thinking. I told her that. She went quiet. Then she said, "You mentioned that when we talked." That night, I checked my reflection longer than necessary. Not in a panicked way, more like an audit. My face looked like it always had. Familiar angles, familiar asymmetry. Nothing shifted when I blinked. Still, I took a photo, then another, then a short video, just to hear my voice played back. Everything matched. I told myself this was social reinforcement, a rumour spreading, people unconsciously aligning their memories once the idea was introduced, until someone saw me somewhere I physically couldn't have been. A neighbour knocked on my door one evening. He looked relieved when I answered. "Hey, you left your lights on earlier. I tried calling out, but you didn't hear me." I asked him what time this was. He said, "About an hour ago." I had been across town at the time. I had a receipt, a timestamp, witnesses. I told him that. He blinked. "Then who was in your apartment?" I stood very still. "What did they do?" I asked. He shrugged. "Nothing strange. They stood by the window, just watching." That word stuck. Watching. I'd much that night. The next morning, I checked my apartment thoroughly. Nothing was missing. Nothing disturbed. No signs of forced entry. The locks were intact. The windows were closed. But something felt wrong. Not in the room, but in the idea of the room. Like the space had been occupied without leaving a mark. I started asking more direct questions. When people said they'd spoken to me, I asked what I'd said. The answers varied, but there was a pattern. I always sounded calm. I asked questions. I listened more than I spoke, and I kept asking people about themselves. One person told me, "You asked what I was afraid of." Another said, "You asked if I ever felt like I was being replaced." That made my stomach tighten, because those weren't casual questions. They were diagnostic. I told myself this was coincidence, that I was projecting meaning onto randomness, that fear creates narratives, but fear doesn't usually anticipate you. One evening, I came home to a note taped to my door. It was written in my handwriting. Not similar, not close. Mine. The same slant, the same pressure marks, the same slight hesitation before certain letters. The note said, "You're early." I stared at it for a long time. I checked the hallway. Empty. I took the note inside and compared it to old notebooks. It matched too perfectly to deny. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post about it. I didn't want outside interpretation yet. I wanted to understand the rules, because by then it felt like there were rules. It only appeared when I wasn't there. It didn't break things. It didn't impersonate me online. It didn't take my place. It interacted just enough to be noticed, like it was practicing. The next incident broke whatever denial I had left. I was walking into work when someone stepped aside to let me pass and said, "See you in a minute." I stopped. "What do you mean?" They looked confused. "You just walked by." I felt cold. "What was I wearing?" I asked. They described my clothes exactly. "What direction?" I asked. They pointed toward the east stairwell. I didn't follow. I stood where I was, heart pounding, and waited. A few minutes passed. Nothing happened. I checked the stairwell later with another co-worker. Empty. Silent. Just echoes. From that day on, I noticed something else. People treated me differently, subtly. They paused before answering my questions. They watched my expressions more closely, like they were comparing me to something else. Once someone said, "You seem less curious today." That wasn't a compliment. It felt like disappointment. I started altering my routines. Different routes, different times, different entrances. I wanted to see if the pattern broke. It didn't. If anything, the reports became more precise. He knew I'd asked that. He answered before I finished speaking. He said, "You wouldn't remember this." That last one made my breath catch. I asked who said it. They described me. One night, I dreamed of standing in front of myself. Not a mirror, another person. Same height, same face, same posture, but the expression was different. Not hostile, not mocking, curious, like I was a subject under observation. When I woke up, there was a missed call on my phone, from my own number. No voicemail. I changed my locks. I changed my passwords. I even considered shaving my hair just to disrupt the resemblance. But something told me that wouldn't help, because this wasn't about appearance. It was about access. The final confirmation came quietly. A co-worker pulled me aside and said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." I nodded. She said, "Are you still you?" I asked her what she meant. She hesitated, then said, "Because the other one told me you'd deny it." I felt my mouth go dry. "What did the other one say?" I asked. She swallowed. "That it's easier if you don't fight it." I don't know what I expected after that. Confrontation, a reveal, something dramatic. None of that happened. And that's what scares me most. Because sometimes, when I walk into a room, people look relieved, like something they've been waiting for finally arrived. And sometimes, I catch my reflection at just the wrong angle. And for a split second, I can't tell whether I'm seeing myself or the version everyone else met first.